Greetings, Starfighters. Welcome to the last regular episode of the season. Thank goodness. Yeah, this season's been a bit of a disappointment, to put it mildly. Even if our next movie, last movie here, Blindfold, turns out to be okay, this will still be, pound for pound, one of the worst seasons of the show we have ever had. Like, up there with season 7. Where, if you're new here, the TLDR version is that season 7 was 10 movies. One was good, one was okay, and the other 8 were varying degrees of shit, ranging from boring shit to offensive shit. So yeah, our last movie here in the Rock Hudson Comedy Collection is called Blindfold. And any notable guest stars? So I should say co-stars in this one. Oh, Claudia Cardinale. Oh, she just recently passed away. Uh-oh, this one deals with a psychologist. The last movie had a psychologist in it, too. Psychiatrist. I know that's not exactly the same thing, but... yeah, oh boy, not great. Okay, so... honestly, all this movie needs to do is be better than the last two, and I'll be okay. I really don't think we're going to reach the level of the first movie this season. Again, the season started off so strong, but yeah. Anyway, let's just go ahead and jump into Blindfold from what year is this from anyway? 1965. Holy shit, the last 3 movies all came out in 1965. Wow. Rock Hudson was a busy dude back then, wasn't he? Yeah. Blindfold, season wrap up next month, or... yeah, season wrap up next month, hopefully, in season 13, and we'll see about anything after that. It's been a weird year.
I have now watched Blindfold from 1966, not 1965 like the DVD case said. Plot summary courtesy of IMDb. Dr. Bartholomew Snow, a psychiatrist, is treating a man with emotional problems who, it turns out, is a brilliant scientist being pursued by different international powers and their operatives. Snow soon finds himself caught in the middle, and out of desperation, he falls in with a mysterious and beautiful woman named Vicky Vincente. But is she helping him, or is she yet another sinister figure out to manipulate him? Our movie opens with a credit sequence where serious-sounding music plays as our lead character rides a horse through Central Park. He is taken aside by a man working for a general, played in this movie by Jack Warden, the Pops from Dirty Work, or the juror with the baseball tickets in 12 Angry Men. I tried to remember his name, and then it hit me. He's like, oh yeah, we don't get names for 10 of the 12 characters in that movie. Anyway. Man, 12 Angry Men is such a good movie. Anyway, there was a specific... God damn it. Yeah, I'd considered including a clip from Dirty Work in here, actually, but I couldn't find it. But if you've seen Dirty Work, it's the... You cheated on Ma? What cheating? Who do you think was holding the camera? That scene. Anyway, the general asks Snow to start working with a former patient of his from 5 years prior, again, the scientist from the plot summary, at a classified location. But we soon see that what was supposed to be a discreet meeting was being watched through binoculars from a tall building by 2 ominous-looking men. I don't know why tall of all words threw me off. In case it wasn't clear already, we have taken a bit of genre swerve for the last movie of this season. We've gone from romantic comedies to a spy comedy. And we go from the park to Snow at his office, where he has to tell his fiancée over the phone that he needs to cancel their plans for that night, though not why. This is all on the general's orders, by the way. And it leads to an argument and Snow putting her photo on his desk face down, so I guess that's over. That was probably going to happen anyway, but props for not dragging it out for the whole movie. And apparently this is not the first time an engagement has fallen apart for him, as we gather from a conversation with his secretary. We cut to him being taken to his first appointment with his former and now new patient, with the car provided by the government being tailed, though the tail is thrown off by a quick switch to another car, while the view of their followers is blocked by a city bus. There's an off-screen switch to a van, which takes Snow to a plane, and the general starts talking to him on the plane about a black market in brains, though he's speaking metaphorically. Specifically, he refers to independent organizations kidnapping genius scientists around the world and offering to sell them to the highest bidding country. When the plane lands, Snow is blindfolded, hence the title of the movie, and is taken to his old/new patient at some abandoned house. The patient, Arthur is his name by the way, attacks Snow while calling him a traitor and looking like he hasn't slept in days. Shortly after this, the general makes an admission to Snow about why they haven't taken Arthur to a military hospital. This whole operation is illegal, as Arthur is a civilian and they have no right to be holding him like this. There is so much commentary I could be making about this, but one, I'm not sure I'm the most qualified to get into it, and two, I especially don't want to get into it if I want to get this episode up on my channel before Halloween. There's a lot. Snow takes being an accessory to kidnapping oddly well. The next day, we see Claudia Cardinale enter the picture as she watches Snow on his horse in the park again while walking her bicycle. She deliberately rides her bike into him while he's riding, making it look like an accident. She creates a scene, yada yada. He takes her to his office. He gets a call about Arthur having escaped but being recaptured and sedated, so he's free to get caught up on his sleep for a little bit. Snow returns to his office to see that Vicky, that's her name from the summary, has taken off but has gone through his files, leaving a mess in the process. Snow is able to track her down with just a little bit of help because she was unfortunately not smart enough to not use her stage name when she introduced herself, and just outside the club where he finds her, she's working as a go-go dancer, the men who'd failed to trail him and the general earlier in the movie pull up in their car. Snow confronts Vicky, and bombshell time. She tells him the file she took is the proof she needs that he was responsible for kidnapping her brother, Arthur. Dun dun dun. This leads to an awkward sequence that ends with Snow getting punched and almost getting nabbed by the shadowy figures before he's taken in by a police officer instead, after Vicky says she plans to file assault charges against Snow, and, fair, honestly. He really could have handled that situation a lot better. He wasn't trying to do what she thought he was, but him putting his hand over her mouth didn't help. This goes nowhere in a scene that, sadly, is all too familiar to a lot of women who actually have been assaulted, especially in big football towns, but I digress. At least one detective in the precinct seems to be relatively on the ball and at least can tell Snow isn't being totally honest, though only we in the audience know why. Vicky, of course, still wants to find her brother and attempts to talk to a gaggle of reporters in the lobby of the police station, but Snow derails that by pulling out the ring he'd been going to give the ex-fiancée from earlier in the movie and saying that they're getting married. Vicky's facial expressions when he pulls this gives me my first actual laugh of the movie, almost 30 minutes in. He manages to get her into a taxi and tells her that he is treating her brother at the Army's request, but won't say any more. The cab driver is right there, but whatever. Snow asks Vicky to trust him, and she says she does, somewhat, and she even laughs at the proposal stunt for its boldness. He then proceeds to fall asleep. She wakes him up when the cab gets to her place, and he walks her to her door, and a little bit of flirting happens here, and it's not bad on its own. I actually like the chemistry these two actors have, but it's awkward having it happen so soon after she was telling the police that he was a sex maniac and a spy. And right after I wrote that sentence, they kiss. Well, that didn't take long. The next day, the general complains about the engagement stunt. Snow's newest non-sequestered patient turns out to be CIA, and the plot gets more complicated as CIA guy implies that the general isn't actually looking to help Arthur, but to get him to spill state secrets or something. Snow is flustered by this and makes a series of phone calls to government agencies to try and figure out if his patient or the general is telling the truth, and can't get a straight answer on either, leaving him unsure what to do. A little bit of social commentary there from the movie. He ends up going to yet another session with Arthur, where the general drops a newspaper announcement about Snow's engagement to his sister, cutting off Snow's attempt to object. The general proceeds to tell Snow in the next room not to break off the engagement, when earlier that day he told him to break it off ASAP. He's also acting increasingly agitated. The general, I mean. We go to Vicky at the park, clearly there to meet Snow, and she gets concerned when she sees his horse running around without him on it. She looks around and manages to spot a group of men carrying Snow off. We cut to Snow being carried into a storage area where CIA guy is waiting for him. He does have his men start punching Snow, asking him to tell them where the hideout Arthur is being kept at is. He doesn't know, of course, because of the thing this movie is named after. He manages to break free, using a canoe as a weapon, and, yeah, there's a reason Rock Hudson isn't known as an action star. I've seen worse fight scenes, but also one punch very obviously doesn't connect. Yes, no, I know none of them are supposed to connect. That's what the choreography is for. My point is, in better movies, they do a decent job of hiding it. Okay, in better fight scenes. I'll get to that. He's ultimately rescued when aid comes in the form of Vicky bringing along some sailors who'd been catcalling her earlier in the movie. Points for managing to use toxic masculinity to her advantage. We go from there, after a slight misunderstanding that leads to Snow getting beat up by the sailors too, though he doesn't hold that against them, to Snow meeting Vicky's parents, who he likes, which he later tells Vicky is a first for him, yada yada. Snow calls the general and fills him in on what happened. The general says the guy was lying about being CIA and was using the name of an agent who was on his way to Singapore at the time. Snow is told to break off the fake engagement, which he attempts to do, but Vicky is clearly not happy about it, and Snow doesn't seem super thrilled either. This leads to them fighting, and as I suspected would happen, the movie takes a bit of a dip in terms of quality once that happens. More on that later. Fake CIA guy has replaced the doctor Snow recommended to replace him on Arthur's treatment. Snow finds out when the real doctor calls him from the hospital after slipping on a wet patch outside his building. Snow talks to the FBI, who can't help for bureaucratic reasons. The detective from earlier, who was the only one who believed Vicky, comes back into the movie at this point. Snow manages to get him talking on the couch, and boy does this scene hit different when you know how many people today became cops because of unresolved anger issues. Anyway, the detective is so busy pouring out his problems that he failed to notice that Snow had left the office entirely, and no lie, this is the funniest scene in the movie. Snow goes and gets Vicky and tells her her brother's location is compromised, and she agrees to help. Working together, they eventually are able to find where Snow was taken to while blindfolded, thanks in no small part to stock footage of geese and a real mule. Vicky's brother and the general, who it turns out was being honest, just kind of a dick, are rescued. The fake CIA guy is taken alive by the military, which I didn't expect. Snow and Vicky kiss. The end. Random thoughts I had while watching the movie. 1. I remembered to say the 1 this time. Haha. While I was copy-pasting the plot summary from IMDb, I noticed a little bit of trivia that the scene in the movie where Snow mistakes the sound of geese for a distant party, which plays into the finale, was homaged in the 1992 Robert Redford movie Sneakers. I've seen Sneakers several times. I did not know that was a reference. I love Sneakers. It's a great movie. If you haven't seen it, you really should. R.I.P. to Robert Redford, and Sidney Poitier, and River Phoenix, and James Earl Jones. That cast was stacked. I think part of the reason that movie didn't do as well as it could have is because the title doesn't... I think a lot of people thought that Sneakers meant the shoes. Wow, I got really sidetracked on that one, didn't I? 2. The last name Vicky gives Snow when they first meet, the stage name, is Vale. Yes, Vicky Vale. So in addition to Sneakers, we can add a Batman connection to this movie. That might not that one might be a coincidence. I mean, we know that comic book writers tend to love the alliterative names. I think Stan Lee just straight up said at one point in an interview he liked giving his characters alliterative names because they're just easier to remember. 3. There's a running gag in the movie where people keep referring to Snow as a Bluebeard, but I have no idea what that's supposed to mean in this context. I know it has nothing to do with piracy. It must be a 1960s thing that didn't stick in the American lexicon, because the movie just drops it like I'm supposed to know what it means. 4. At one point during the storage area fight scene, Snow also manages to use a fire extinguisher to hold off his attackers. Unless they made them different back in the 1960s, I'm pretty sure the suppressant wouldn't come out the way it did. It looked more like whipped cream to me. 5. I wonder how much of this film's failings come from the source material. The opening credits did say it was based on a novel of the same name. Though if the good parts of the movie came from the book too, I might want to check that out at some point. 6. Vicky's little brother is an amusing character, but I didn't talk about him much because he had very little effect on the plot. 7. I think at least one alligator might have been harmed in the making of this picture. I will not provide context for that. You're going to have to guess what I meant. Have fun with that. Final verdict. It's okay, I guess. The two leads are fun to watch play off each other for the most part, but it takes too long to get to that. Plus, the movie's actual plot keeps interrupting it, and the plot itself doesn't really become interesting until the last act. I want you to imagine a Venn diagram in your head. One of the circles, label that when Rock Hudson and Claudia Cardinale are on screen together. The other circle, call that when Rock Hudson and Claudia Cardinale's characters are on the same page. The overlap area, where those two circles meet, that's where the majority of the good parts of this movie come from. Unfortunately, I just don't think there was enough of that. Granted, considering how horrible I found the couples from, every movie this season except the first one, I'll take it. I'll take not enough over, oh my god, I hate both of you. Yeah. Yeah. Really, the plot is where the movie suffers the most because, like I said, it doesn't really become fun until the last act. I mean, we're talking the last 30 minutes of a 105-minute movie, including credits. I guess if I had to sum up this movie with a meme, it would be the one of Pedro Pascal and Wonder Woman 84 going, life is good, but it could be better. This movie is okay, but it could have been good. Definitely better than Wonder Woman 84, but let's not get into that. Tune in next time when we do the season wrap-up for the Rock Hudson Comedy Collection. Have fun, stay safe, and happy Halloween!